Hello folks and welcome to the show with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined from the start by Ryan O'Dwyer today, obviously former Tipperary and former Dublin hurler. So we've plenty of good stuff to talk about, and Michael Verney is just joining us there now as well. Michael, how are things? We're going to start off with Dublin Kilkenny, so keep your powder dry for now.
Are you mad?
I don't know, you tell me.
Well, the two Tipperary lads, one either side of me, and we're going to start with Dublin Kilkenny.
Yeah, well, like, you know, both of us are stuck in with the Dublin game, like, so where else would you start?
If that's where you're throwing your allegiances in now, because they're still in the championship with Tipp, aren't they? We're in a bad state of affairs.
We're fairly caught. Michael, you can set the tone here, because myself and the lad don't know what to say.
Yeah, well, like, it's funny enough, like, I have people getting on to me, I'd say I'd be delighted tomorrow. I actually take very little satisfaction in Tipperary going so stink. And that's a fact, because you want to see all the best teams at the top table and performing to a fair level. But I just throw it back to you, Shane. Like, where do you go from here? And where does Liam Cahill go from here as well, to be honest with you? Because it's just, there's a serious rebuild on. He's 2 years into the rebuild. Does the rebuild look any clearer now than it did, you know, when Colin Bonner finished? Like, and I know, like, that was a 2022 result yesterday, and the Limerick defeat was a 2022 result as well. That's kind of where it's at the minute. So, you know, where do you go from here?
I don't know. It does have, I hate to say it, but a feeling of the wilderness years about it, because you just wonder, outside of like the underage teams, and you could say they're going quite well, the minors and the under 20s, but it's going to be a long time before a lot of those players come on stream. And I was down at the sort of the interview scrum with Liam Cahill afterwards, and he was just crestfallen, and you can totally understand it. But the team he took over obviously wasn't flying, and there was a couple of green shoots last year, and you could maybe look at it as like, okay, maybe last year was overperforming, and then this year now is where we're truly at, and it's going to take a long time to get things right. But it's a Tipperary team in a bit of a tailspin, and any shot to the confidence at all, and the team is creaking. Like, Ryan, the team just fell apart, just like against the Limerick game. There was good heart shown against Watford to pull it out of the bag late on, but it just seems that Tipp have a soft underbelly at the moment. The supporters obviously didn't buy in, outnumbered maybe 7 or 8 to 1 when I was there, maybe even more. It just feels like that team's in a tailspin, Ryan.
Yeah, and you'd wonder, you'd wonder where's the answer. Where's the solution for this? You mentioned there about Colin Bonner, that is the team that Liam took over. You remember Colin had a lot of injuries, and blooded a lot of lads that year that he was in. But you really thought, and I'm probably guilty of it, I really thought that, right, they dealt with that in a bad way. But I think Liam is the man to take him over. He's the only, like, he had them at under 20. And he will make a difference now, but it seems to be going not just one step backwards, and it seems to be lunging into the past. But yeah, you look at underage, I know they're doing well. Brendan Cummins doing well with the 20s, but you'd wonder where, like, in 5 years' time, where is Tipp hurling going to be?
And just, Shano, you always hark back to the risks. Whatever about anything else, we have the risks. And with due respect, it doesn't look like you have the risks nearly as much now. So you don't have the athletes that a lot of other teams have. And like, you have good hurlers, don't get me wrong, but you don't. Listen, it's very hard to replace Brendan Maher, Paddy Maher, Shameful, Colin, like generational players. I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of questions, I'd say, going into what's going to be a long winter, I'd imagine.
Well, like, you look at the teams that did win underage in 2018 and 2019, the under 20 and the under 21. Like, and obviously, folks, we're going to get to how good Cork were. They were unbelievable, but the story is how disastrous Tipperary were. Like, how many of those players that led that team to that led that team over the line are now central parts of the team? Maybe Jake Morris, probably one or two. Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
No, Shane, you're saying about those lads coming through from those teams. When you're coming, we'll say 2018, right? You're coming out. You're hoping to make it on the senior team, but Liam Sheedy held on to the lads that did him good down through the years, and I can totally understand that, and he got the best out of them. But those lads that were coming through from under 20 and 21 before that, they were kind of sitting idle for a few years, training with the panel, and you'd wonder, did they become static? They didn't have that springboard. You can only be part of a panel for so long without getting game time, and you just get sick of it, and your standard drops and everything, because all you're doing is training. You're not playing matches. So I do think that is an issue, that maybe I wouldn't say the motivation, because the motivation should be there anyway. You want to play inter-county level, but if you're there for 2-3 years, you can understand a year or two, but if you're there 2, 3, possibly 4 years, and might get 5 minutes during the league, or you might get a game during the league, and that's all you're getting, you start to drop off. And at senior inter-county level, you need a consistent conveyor belt of lads coming through. But it was stunted there for a while because they weren't coming through. And now you're going to say COVID was there as well, that management teams held on to what they knew, because they didn't get to see lads during leagues and all that. So look, there's lots of I suppose excuses you could come up with, but the lads that are there at the moment have to take responsibility. The management team have to take responsibility, and I suppose look at themselves in the mirror and see, well, what do we need to do to get things right?
Yeah, Michael, you might, like, I mean, what he's talking about, players coming through and being brought through and being exposed. I mean, it's not like I didn't say this as it was happening. Like, some of those players that won in 2019, brilliant to get over the line, but you knew that those players couldn't continue winning. So, to me, the next generation had to be blooded. They weren't, and were possibly, it's not the only reason, but that certainly has contributed to what's going on right now. Those players don't have the experience, and they're going out and getting annihilated.
Yeah, you would have said it fairly regular at the time. I can't understand where Sheedy was coming from in a respect, and a lot of the time you're doing what is right for you as manager at that time and what you think will get you silverware at that time, but it probably hasn't done any favours at all for what's coming. And now you'd say lads that have been thrust into positions and positions of responsibility and leadership. That's not even talking about like where they're playing on the pitch, but and it's just not really there. The thing that I can't get my head around, and the biggest indictment is that the white flag was raised yesterday with about 15 or 20 minutes to go, and that's
there was no
that's
fight.
Unforgivable. That is unforgivable. You can lose the game or whatever, or not be good enough on a given day, and that's fine, or not be good enough in general, but you stay fighting until the last ball is poked, and that didn't happen yesterday, and that's a worry. And that's 2 games that's happened in out 3 in Munster, and there's no point in saying any different.
Verney, I'm just going to ask you a question, right? Did they throw in the towel with 15, 20 minutes to go, or were fitness levels just not what they should be? Because at inter-county level, fitness levels, there can't be 99%. It has to be 100%, because you know the opposition are going to do that. So they did look flat at times. I remember it was one time, I'm trying to think who it was. Was it Bo? I could be wrong there now, throwing him under the bus, but he maybe 10 yards on his man. It was near the end of the game. 10 yards on his man. He went soloing up along the sideline and ended up getting hooked by Pat Horgan, a 36-year-old that should not be making up 10 yards on a lad if he has open space.
Yeah, the thing I don't get, like Liam Cahill has said several times, I can't understand why they're so flat. Like when that's a common team, like league semi-final, Limerick, Cork, that's 3 out of their last 4 games they've been flat. There's clearly more of an issue than it's just been flat on a given day. They weren't too flat against Waterford.
And I look, this might be going a bit too deep, but you look at Cahill's last year in Waterford, absolutely flying it during the league, and then did they peak too early, or did they just taper off with fitness levels? And did it become just too much of a slog for them? Was it too much too early?
Can I throw this one at you? Like, so we could say all the physical things in the world, but why is the confidence levels of players so on the floor, right? Like, you look at some really good players here and you wonder, and he's still doing a bit of damage. Like, Jake Morris just doesn't look as confident. The touch isn't as instant as it was. Jason Ford, I mean, his free taking has just hit the skids. And I know you could say TJ Reid's free taking over the weekend as well, but like, we're talking about good players and they just seem to be playing way, way beneath their normal level.
Yeah, look, I don't know, is it a confidence issue? I think it comes from the training. And a few examples yesterday during the game. There was lads, they were very nice hurling. It was kind of like, we're going to play at our own pace, our own sloppy pace. And that was, I think that's, at the moment, that's Tipp's normal. right? You create your normal. You don't just turn it on the day of a championship game. you create your normal at training. And looking at the game yesterday, they seem to be going at just I won't say a slug's pace, but it was a nice pace. It wasn't that inter-county, and I think you know what I mean by this, even though I can't really explain it. You know what I mean by the bluster of inter-county championship summer hurling, because yesterday was summer hurling. Every all the conditions were right. The ground was hard. The sun was shining. It just screamed Munster hurling. I know Verney mightn't agree with that, but just it screamed Munster Championship hurling yesterday in Thurles. It's what every hurler wants, and all the conditions were there for it. And the hurling should have been 100 miles an hour, but it wasn't. It was just a nice. Maybe things are just too nice at training. And yesterday during the game and the last day against Limerick, they went into a cauldron of intensity that it was like, oh Jesus, what's going on here? We're not used to this. Do you know?
I find that hard to believe based on what I know about Liam Cahill and Mikey Beavens' training, but I understand what you're saying. And it sounds like from what Liam is saying after games that they're not taking the intensity and the confidence of what he's seeing in training during the week to the match day. But like when that happens 3 out of the last 4 times in 4 big games, you only deliver 1 performance. There's a hell of a lot of questions to be answered.
But how do they know who's actually on form if like Tipperary don't have the most athletic team? Everybody knows that. And how do you even know who's right to play against Limerick, Cork, Clare, who just have loads of athletes? Even Watford have plenty of them too. When you're going on training, which is probably, like Ryan is suggesting, at that bit of a slower pace. And I think if Liam Cahill is going to stay on and he has a 3rd year, whatever a contract in GA is worth, because it's not as if it's a legally binding thing with money involved, but he's either going to have to change his coaching background or his coaching kind of ticket, which would mean separating with Michael Beavens. He's going to have to change the S&C. Or he might even say, am I the man or not? Like, something drastic has to change here, Ryan. And maybe that involves moving on players, which sometimes feels like the easy thing to do. But something drastic has to change because they can't just go on with the status quo.
Yeah, look, you look at Brian Cody. And I know we're going back a few years now, but like every few years, he changed his backroom team. And he was there, 20-something years. But every few years, there was, and it mightn't have changed it altogether, there was someone new every 2 or 3 years. And I think that freshens it up. I think it creates there's a new perspective coming in, just fresh eyes coming in. And yeah, it creates, I suppose, a bit of discomfort for people that are there, because I think if you get too comfortable, you get set in your own ways. And I think bringing someone new in to a setup, but will make the management team right. We better keep on our toes here. We need to drive on, but also the players. They have someone else to impress. They have a new person to impress, and we need to. And that's if that person has a say. It's easy to bring a person into a setup, but we still do what we want because we're in charge. So,
can I just ask you, the 2E, if it's a non-performance against Clare, to me, I think that's probably the end of the road, because if you're on about rebuilding, but you're starting off your 3rd year, you're starting to rebuild at the start of your 3rd year, I think you're in bother. And if the players aren't playing for you, or I don't know what's going on, but if just say Clare win by 8, what's the scenario?
I would imagine that if the team does not perform whatsoever and show whatever is required, bit of steel, bit of guts, bit of fight, whatever, yeah, I can't imagine a manager would want to stay on in that scenario, because you'd probably weigh up everything that you've seen in the 2 seasons and say, well, look, it's not working for me. And to be fair to Liam Cahill, he said after the game that obviously things are very, very difficult, and this will turn eventually. Whether it turns under my watch, obviously I hope it does or not, is another thing, but it will turn. So I would imagine he's realistic to know. Sometimes you can be flogging a dead horse, Ryan. I would like to see him do well. Obviously, whoever's Tipp manager, I want to see them do well. But I don't know. Are you backing things to be turned around, given where we're at the moment,
Ryan? Look, there is going to be a transition of players. You look at the panel, right? There's a good mix of lads there well into their 30s. how long more are they going to be around? So you're talking about a rebuild in your third year, whether it's your first year as manager or your third year as manager. Some of them are going to have to move on. Now, some of them you'll want around because they're a good influence around. They're great for younger lads, and I'm sure you can think of lads when you were playing yourselves, when you started playing and when you were coming to the end. You knew lads that they were great for the young lads, so they're great just to have them around. But you kind of weigh it up and say, right, yes, I want to rebuild, but who can I rebuild with? Whether they're good for the players or not, who can I rebuild with that can still contribute on the pitch and bring all the players along, but also lead by example. Do you know, it is a hard one. Like you said, what is the next step for Cahill? Is it? And I suppose a lot will depend on the Clare game. A lot will depend on the Tipp public as well, because the Tipp public, I know it's the county board makes the decisions, but the Tipp public, whoever's in the county board, they're going down the pub, they're going down to the shop, they're going to mass. It's all the talk. And you'd wonder how much the public talk, the outside noise, how much can they filter without taking some of it on board?
Just a quick one, actually. Just a quick one. I know Cahill and Davy have this weird kind of thing where they talk about each other without mentioning each other's names. But Cahill is in the exact same position as Davy was in last year, going into a dead rubber game, and they had 2 bad championship performances, which Tipp have had. They had 1 good one, which Tipp have had. And it's a dead rubber game, but I think there's so much on the line for Tipp. And I think there's so much on the line for Liam Cahill as well against Clare. It's anything but a dead rubber. It's a dead rubber in name only. Davy saved his job last year, to me, by beating Tipp, and the performance that they gave to show, okay, there is something there if we play this way or we have this type of attitude. So it'd be fascinating to see what Tipp bring to the table on Sunday.
I'd agree with you that Davy did save his job last year with the game against Tipp. Might that be a case with Liam this year? I don't know. But look, regardless of result, I think it's about performance. And they have to show that, right, yeah, we've had a downer of a year. It's been very bad, but here there's a bit of fight in us now. There's a bit of fight. We want to right a few wrongs. We want look, the players, you could have anyone over them, but when your backs are to the wall, if you want to go down fighting, well, here's your chance to do it and show people. All lads are going to go back to club game. What's going to be the voice in their ear from lads they're marking or lads even in their club? Is it going to be all negative, or are they going to go back basically with a little bit of pride?
And you know, I was watching this. Well, number one, I suppose Colin Bonner's tenure finished. I suppose partly because the Tipperary public
tenure didn't finish. It was finished for him.
Whatever way you want to look at it. But no, I know, fair enough. You're from the same town and everything, Ryan. So I totally understand you backing him. But you think about it, the Tipperary public turned their backs on the team that time. They've turned their backs once again, because obviously they didn't show up. And I wouldn't even be shocked if it was 9-1 at Shameful Stadium. It was bad. But you look at this game, right? Coming up to halftime, Jason Ford missed a free from the 21, which you would just never ever expect him to miss. And again, a symptom of the lack of confidence in the team. Then Cork go straight up and score a brilliant goal through Alan Connolly. And just at the start of the second half, you could see that Cahill Barrett was not moving well, because Brian Hayes got 2 points in a row on him. And the second one, he pulled up holding his hamstring. And why he or the management team didn't insist on a substitution instantly, I couldn't believe it, because you're not going to run off a hamstring injury. And then the goal comes, and then the confidence is done. Hitting the puck out straight to the injured player as well. I just couldn't get over it. And any chance Tipp had of going tit for tat, and to be fair, got the next 2 points, brought back to 4. But just such a confidence blow. And then once the third goal went in, which was a Mickey taking exercise from Cork, the hand passed around, it was just it was just a drubbing from then on out. It was really dispiriting watching, Michael. And I know you've been there many times over the last 25 years.
Yeah, no, you're dead right. And when a team is walking through you like that, what was it, a 1-2-3 between Luke Meade and Alan Connolly, and you're like, how have one of these not been left into the middle of next week? But it wasn't that type of game though, lads. Tipp didn't, I don't know whether they couldn't get close to them physically or whatever, but there was no big robust hits or anything like that. It wasn't a physical game. Cork did, if you go and play that type of game with Cork, lads, if you play a game of non-contact hurling, they will beat you every day of the week, twice on Sunday. And that's basically what that was at different stages yesterday. I thought, like, there was very few lads come out with any credit. I thought Craig Morgan was good in the face of everything that was thrown against him. And, like, Ron Amara was battered and bruised and beaten, and he still came out fighting, in fairness. But there weren't too many other fellas that came away with too much credit.
Yeah, just in terms of Cork then, how good are they, Ryan?
Look, I have no problem saying it. I said it there, was it last? I definitely said it last year, and I think I said it the year before, that I think, first of all, I think Pat Ryan is the right man over him, because he had them at underage and he'll bring them through. And he is bringing them through. He's breeding them all, or he's breeding them all. But also, I said 2024, I said, will be a building year. You think about last year, 2023. I know they didn't qualify out of Munster, but they barely got bet in every game that they got bet in. Like, Limerick just bet them. Like, they just fell a little bit short time and time again. The first game this year, I think if they were to play Waterford again, I think they'd go out and I think they'd beat them well. And then, so that will say that was last year. This year, I think they're building, and I think next year that they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. I hate saying it because I don't want Cork to win, but I think they're Limerick's biggest threat. Certainly Limerick's biggest threat. Maybe not this year, but I think next year, I think they're going to build and they're going to be Limerick's biggest threat. Yeah, I think, because they don't just have good players, they've depth as well. And I know they're relying on Hoggy. I think Hoggy scored, was it 1-9, 1-4 from play, but they have a spread of scores everywhere on the pitch.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say about Cork yesterday, there was the resistance to them was not particularly strong, but they are hurling some stuff at the minute, boys. They are on the crest of a wave. This is the sort of like the beating Limerick and delivering and backing it up. There was no energy deficit 8 days after the Limerick game. Zero, none whatsoever. They're coming in, like, this is the big if they're still in the championship. Why is it mad to say a team would never go out of the championship playing better stuff than Cork are? You could realistically say now that Cork could win the All-Ireland, and they could. And if they get through, they could, but they mightn't. But they're playing great stuff. They seem to have fallen on a winning combination. Like, even Rob Downey at centre back, you can't get around him at the minute.
They didn't even bring on Kieran Joyce, who was their cast iron centre back.
Imagine, Shano, we would have said a situation where Cork would, win 2 games and be absolutely flying without Joyce, and we'd be in a situation where Joyce is fit to play and he mightn't necessarily be playing. But lads seem to have grown a foot, and they're just playing as a team, and they're giving the ball to the right man in the right positions. And in Connolly, they have a fella who's a bit of a wrecking ball up front, who's a bit of a goal machine. And yeah, they are one dangerous proposition if they're in the championship come 6 o'clock next Sunday.
Alan Connolly could be the new King Con. I mean, he's basically a Con O'Callaghan approach to hurling, hasn't he, Ryan?
Well, look, you just say anything nice about any person from Coola anyway. But yeah, no, look, I do agree. Like, look, that goal he took just before half time, he only had one thing in mind. Like, a lot of lads would have just turned, put the ball over the bar, point before half time, and that would have made a big difference. But he didn't. He was ruthless, and you need to be to hurl at that level. You need to be. But yeah,
he even sensed that Ronan Matter, I'd say, was on the yellow and couldn't pull him back or couldn't take him down. And even the black card is a it's a winner for that sole reason. Even if a lad just has to think twice about pulling a fella down. But like, geez, boys, he's just so direct. He's so accurate, and he has that
speed as well.
Speed and power. Yeah.
Do you know, I think the biggest difference with Cork, it probably didn't show the first day, or maybe they got it wrong the first day against Waterford, but I do think that their backroom team, they do so much research on the opposition. You saw the last day against Limerick. They had them down to a T just to disrupt them, to mess up their game. The same yesterday. Yeah, I know Tipp were just behind at half time, but they had a plan, and they stuck so in, and it broke down every facet of the opposition. And they did. I just think that the research and the background work they do on the opposition, I think, is second to none.
And the opposite then for Tipp. 5 times in the game did Tipperary hit 50-50 sidelines straight to Cork players. And you look at Limerick working them all short. I know you can't stay that long, Ryan, so I'm going to ask you about the Dublin game against Kilkenny. Dublin just pipped right at the end there. What did you make of the performance? And, they're basically on the edge now. If they lose to Galway, they're almost certainly out.
Yeah, look, I was critical of Galway of Dublin earlier in the year, but they really blown me away. Like the fight that they're showing, they're all playing for each other. The quality of the hurling that they're doing is brilliant. They're way ahead of where I thought they were. I was kind of writing them off for this year, and I'm kind of coming back to eat my words now. But like that, and I suppose that's the beauty of the new championship, the new structure, that you can play unbelievable games, and it comes down to the final day of the round robin stages, and any of the teams, like even Kilkenny, could end up third. So like anything could happen there. Yeah, there's the table there. Like look, anything could happen if Wexford beat Kilkenny, and yeah, looking at this, Kilkenny are through anyway, but they mightn't get through to a Leinster final if Wexford beat them. But yeah, look, it is shaping up well. The only ones look, even at the other end of the table, you have Antrim and Carlow. It comes down to their dogfight and see who wins that as well, to see who stays up for next year. So there's an awful lot to be played for yet.
And like you obviously know the Hayes brothers from your days, Kilmacud Crokes, but geez, Ronan was one of those players who could absolutely take over, but he must be sick at those couple of goal chances. Owen Murphy saved one brilliantly, but you nearly expect Hayes to always bury those chances.
You do, like he could, and like remember the county final there a few years ago against Nafina, when Crokes won and were behind by a good bit, and Ronan won that game by himself. He dragged Crokes over the finish line. From playing with him, he's the most frustrating lad ever. I swear, because like that, he can win a game by himself, but then he mightn't touch a ball, and you just want to drag him by the scruff of the neck and give him a kick up the backside. But like, look, there's nobody doubting his talent. His talent, it is incredible. And Brian, personally, I think give Brian a year to it, he'll be better than Ronan. But like he didn't play on any Dublin team growing up long. He wasn't even on the Crokes first team for minor or whatever. But then he's just done the simple things right, and you see the way he took that goal. He continued on his run. He took that goal there on Saturday. Like, he's really coming into his own. Give him a year or two. Like a lot of that team, give Donovan centre back a year or two. I can see, and I'm eating my words here. I'm kind of contradicting myself from what I said at the start of the year, that the players aren't there. You could have anyone over them, that you won't get any result out of them. I can really see progress being made there by Donoghue, and I was his biggest critic, but I can see it being made, and I would like to see him given another year or two, and to see, can he go a step further.
Was it Conor Burke that gave the pass to Hayes for the goal? I think it might have been. It's so smart because like Hayes is absolutely electric. There's no point in you setting off on a run if this lad's going on your shoulder. And he actually just waited for him, because he was like, this lad's going to road runner past me here, and he's going to be the one to get the shot away.
No, I think was it Conor Burke's goal, or was it Hayes' goal? Crummy gave it to him.
Oh, Crummy set up the first one, I think. Was it? I think Crummy set up the first one. Crummy had his hands on everything, lads. Like, that was like a 2019 versus Galway in Parnell Park kind of game. He had
his hands on everything except John Donnelly, who scored 7 going the other way. Crummy scored 4 and Donnelly scored 7. Mad stuff.
Yeah, it was crazy. Just on Ronan Hayes' chance that he put wide, there was a brilliant turnover underneath the stand, the far side. And it was just building, and if the ball had hit the back of net, the place would have absolutely exploded. They probably, I know they ended up 3-up when Brian got the goal, but they probably needed that, and they probably needed more of a buffer. It was just, I think it was the 11 minutes without a score that really, really killed them. I think Kilkenny were able to batten down the hatches, and Dublin found it very difficult to even get shots away in the last probably 20 minutes, let alone get scores on the board. And only 3 points in the last 20 minutes it just won't win you a game when you're kind of hanging on like that.
Yeah, but they fought right to the end, and I suppose Kilkenny are a team that are used to winning. They're used to being in positions like this, and I think the experience probably paid off in the end. But look, Dublin, I know moral victories and all that, or moral defeats or whatever, but like the Dublin can be very proud of that performance in Parnell the other day. And it kind of shows you how important Parnell is to Dublin hurling. Because like to go down to Salt Hill now, I don't know anyone that likes going to Salt Hill, whether it is hurling or football, because there's always a breeze blowing there, and it's blown one way in the first half, but then it changes at half time. And
you hated Galway when you were a Dublin player. Come on, tell us about some of the rounds.
With a passion, with an absolute passion. But look, it is going to be interesting down in Salt Hill. Can Dublin hit the heights that they did on Saturday and give another performance? If they can give the same performance in Salt Hill, I certainly wouldn't rule out a Dublin victory. But going to Salt Hill is going to be tough. They won't have the crowd at their back like they did in Parnell Park, which I tell you, that's like a 16th man. It does spur you on. And yeah, look, I suppose they have to decide, are they going travelling down the morning of the game? Are they going travelling down the night before, staying overnight? How do they, if they travel down, how are they going to kill those few hours if they travel down that morning? Sorry, if they travel down the
Donoghue's house, sure.
What's that?
Call into me, all Donoghue's house, sure.
There you go.
Just stay local. But Ryan, last question just before we let you go, because I know you have to go back to work there. Kilkenny, what do you make of them? And TJ Reid's having a small bit of a wobble just at the moment. Now, he'd probably come through it, but it isn't going for him perfectly at the moment.
No, it's not. But you see, he's not back hurling that long. He didn't hurl during the league or hurled very limited, like his limited hurling during the league. So I think he's going to get better as the year goes on. Look, Kilkenny, I think, have done enough to be where they are now at the moment. I know they had a wobbler against Carlow and a draw against Galway, but they are where they want to be. I think they're, I suppose, maybe in a cocky way, but they're thinking of the All-Ireland as well, and getting everyone right for the All-Ireland. Look, the last few games, they've been missing a few key players. I know they had Cody back the last day, but they're still missing one or two key players. But Derek Ling is looking at the longer game and seeing, right, I could push this lad now to get him right for this game, but I want him right in 2 weeks' time or in 3 weeks' time. So the lads coming back are definitely going to add to it. Will they do enough to progress and possibly win All-Ireland? I don't think so. I think it's going to be a Munster team that win. You'd have to fancy Limerick, but I think, look, any of the three teams that come out, whether it is the two finalists or the third place team, you'd have to fancy one of the Munster teams to go all the way.
Ryan, you probably have to go back to work there. So thanks very much for joining us.
All right, lads.
Cheers, Ryan.
Okay, great to have Ryan on there. Any further thoughts on Kilkenny yourself? I mean, Owen Cody scored 1-3, Donnelly 7, TJ got 1 from play, 7 frees, Mossy Keown with 3, David Blanchfield also with 3.
Yeah, no, I put it out there yesterday, just going back through some scores. Like, I honestly do think that, like, take Owen Cody out of it, maybe, but the lead, some of the new leaders emerging. Donnelly's been around a good while, but he's in serious form this year. I think he's 15 points from play across the 4 games. Mossy Keown has averaged 3 a game. Keane Kenny, even, like, if you told me a couple of years ago that Keane Kenny would be a forager and a very effective forager, I wouldn't have believed it. And he's still able to put over a couple of outrageous points like he did the other day. He's had 2 or 3. I think he had 4 against Galway. And David Blanchfield as well is another one kind of driving it forward. So there's some new faces there. Would I be thoroughly impressed with them now? I wouldn't be, to be honest with you. And they kind of rode their luck at different stages the other day. Had Hayes shopping on target. Had Keane O'Sullivan not pulled up for that goal chance going through, that he ended up kind of volleying over the bar one-handed, it could have been a different story, but they were able, like, thought Billy Ryan was brilliant actually, and I'd be a critic of him at times.
Steps for the goal at the end?
Yeah, see, the real frustrating thing, like, Micheál Donoghue's generally a quiet enough kind of fella, even on the line. He was going absolutely berserk berserk throughout the game, because all you really want is consistency. Like, if TJ overcarried twice and Owen Cody overcarried, like, then Billy Ryan definitely overcarried. Like, to me, definitely one of the TJ ones was very, very debatable. So, like, if you're calling them, then you call the more obvious one. And I know he kind of went around a man, and maybe Johnny Murphy was blindsided or whatever, but there were a couple of little calls. Like, there was one, I don't know if I was up there so I could see it in real time, but Mikey Butler was going forward at one stage and spilled the ball and basically did like a clear out of a ruck when the ball wasn't there, like ball was gone, he basically like ran through a fella, and it wasn't a free. I just couldn't believe what I was watching. Now saying that, and I will bring his name up, like Danny Sutcliffe's tackle on Keane Kenny when O'Donnell was going through near the end was a nasty tackle, and it was completely off the ball, and it was totally unwarranted, and he was completely blindsided. And I believe Keane Kenny's fine in that, but it was a nasty tackle, nasty, like, and it's a nasty type of tackle that I think we do need to stamp out again, because it's a real dangerous one. Particularly, like, if he had the ball, you'd say something. The ball wasn't even near him, and he was just kind of taken out. It was like a spear or something, like gore, like you'd see in the WWE almost.
He had some performance though, didn't he, Sutcliffe? I mean, that aside, and it can be hard to judge intent, but it didn't look great. But he had some performance, and those catches with the right hand. I remember going back, and like, we're coming up to another sort of final day showdown in Leinster when that last happened in 2019, when all the same 4 teams were in the mix. That day against Galway, when they came to Parnell Park, he was catching with the right hand as well, and he's always done it. But that day really stood out with him doing it, and he's at it again. It's unbelievable.
It's a very good sign for Dublin that. So usually when Sutcliffe is humming, Dublin are humming, and
his best year since 2013.
Yeah, probably. Just hard to believe that it's 11 years ago. Yeah, when he got the goal against Kilkenny in O'Moore Park. I don't think it will have taken too much out of Dublin to have not won, if you get me. I know they're probably going to be missing Keane O'Sullivan now, going to Galway, but I still think they'll take a fair bit of heart from it. And just the pace is what potentially could really trouble Galway. Could really trouble them. And they played the ball around there pretty well. I was very interested looking at it as well. They went totally man on man on Owen Murphy's puck. It's like completely man on man, as in there was lads in acres of space. They really trusted the full back line, and generally they were rewarded for it as well. Just couldn't get the couple of big scores on the board when they needed to at the end. But I think they'll fancy their chances even going to Pearse Stadium at the weekend.
Yeah, I like, in a way, probably hurling is moving more towards the man-on-man for the puckouts, particularly at county level, because every player is so good, adept at moving it out from the back. And, you know, probably one of my biggest frustrations is that when I see Tipperary try to move it out from the back, there is zero plan from what I can see. So, like, we're probably going to see more and more of it. And also, with Conor Donoghue doing quite well at centre-back there now, he seems to have settled there. Like, you'd often see him playing in the forwards for his club, Erin's Isle. I suppose a lot of players can play in the forwards as well, especially at county level, because they have the class. But it has released Conor Burke up the field, and you mentioned his goal already. I think it's good to have him that bit further up the field, because he's so tidy and calm on the ball. If he's going through a tight area, he'll be able to do that 1-2. He'll be able to do a little feint shot and then deliver it up the field. So I think that's a big bonus.
Yeah, he'd probably gotten used to playing that role, maybe like a glorified sweeper role for the good to 3 or 4 years, I'd say. And we saw how good he was in the ball and how good he is at taking scores from distance. But he got, what did he get? 1-1 the other day. Got a lovely point underneath the stand when they really needed it as well. Yeah, their defense looks pretty solid. Their defense looks pretty solid. It's going forward that they probably thought they needed a bit more. And him maybe middle of the field, and even Crummy bursting forward, and Sutcliffe been in pretty good form, and that's going to have to allay probably Keane O'Sullivan been out at the weekend, because I'd be amazed if he togs out next Sunday, just based on the injury picked up. He looked in big bother.
Yeah. Do you know what? I want to ask you about Offaly and their brilliant performance. You know, we've got another couple of games to come back to, and we're hoping to have Colin Ryan of Clare on soon enough. But Offaly 324, Kerry 15 points. Geez, that was pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, brilliant result. The issue I have with the McDonough at the minute is like that does probably get lost in everything else that was going on over Saturday and Sunday, and that's just the nature of it. It was an awful pity that Luke Crowley couldn't play for Kerry. He would, if the games had been Saturday and Sunday, he probably would have played. They were fixed for the same time at different venues on the same day, which I found very strange.
Under 20 final for people who aren't sure.
Yeah, which I found very strange, to say the least. Like, and by all accounts, hurling is his number one, but it was pretty tight in the first 20-25 minutes. Offaly, the ball going inside wasn't particularly good. Owen Cattle's penalty kind of really helped Offaly get motoring, and they never really looked back. Like, you wouldn't have predicted that like this. I thought this was not a 50-50 game. I thought it was probably 60-40 in Offaly's favour, but it's a huge result. And it means that we get a shot at revenge, at least in the final, and it also means that we didn't have to go too hard on the 20s that'll be playing Wednesday night. I think Cottle King came off after about 55 minutes. Dan Burke the same. Adam Screeney came on for 4 minutes, I think, as a temporary sub, and Donald Shirley came on for the last 20 minutes. So, like, that's a pretty good balancing act by Leo O'Connor and Johnny Kelly, and I think Johnny has been particularly fair to the 20s in that regard as well.
There is one happy man, Colin Ryan, former Clare hurler. Colin, you got over the line against Waterford. Let's go straight to the post-match scenes and the schmozzle in the middle of the pitch. People say, oh, you hate to see these scenes. We love to see these scenes. It adds to the drama. It's more to talk about.
Yeah, listen, I think much ado about nothing, really, to be quite honest. I get the fact like that everybody's heated. It's probably a time and a place for how you deal with these things. First and foremost, the call was correct. So, like, we can't give out about the call or anything like that. The call was correct. Looking at replays, I suppose Tommy Corbett, Clare selector, shouldn't have probably pushed. You know, it just kind of escalated the problem. There's a time and a place for airing these views, and it's all heated, I suppose, at the end of the day. The temperature was hot in Ennis yesterday. You know, the game was in the melting pot, and when you lose a game like that, it's hard to take. So I think everything brews up a bit too much. I think, you know, when Davy's involved in it, I think no matter what he does, it's probably going to make media headlines. But yeah, I don't see any major thing. You can be frustrated. It's probably, there's a way to air it. Probably could have aired it after that rather than straight, you know, in on top of the referee. It just looks bad.
Just the only thing I'll say about this is the call was probably right. Okay,
not probably. The call was right.
You could if the umpire on the near side made that call, like, he has laser vision. If he's able to see through 3 or 4 people, how he was able to make that call, I'll never know. I think that was one part of it, the frustration. Where the 65 was taken from, lads, was a joke. Like, in all fairness, the 65, like, and Colin, this is the thing. You would take advantage of that situation as well if you could, because the umpire should have been standing out about 20 metres away from the post. The linesman should have been standing exactly where he was. Mark Rogers was like, all right, lads, so I'll take it from the middle then, will I? And it was like a free that was probably 60-40 in his favour now became maybe an 80-20. But it was bizarre to see that happening.
Yeah, and I like the one thing about the GA which lacks is probably the communication. Now, listen, the Premier League is the very same. It lacks the communication in terms of how they get across things to people in the stadium and on the field. Like, did a linesman make the call on the 65? You know, was it the referee making the call into the umpire? Like, they're obviously all talking to one another. Just we can't hear it. Yeah, like, even Rogers trying to take a couple of feet even on the 65, you know, it's like, yeah, there was a lot of things that could have been tightened up on in terms of where it was taken, but like, listen, we're going to take that every day of the week. You know, it's up to the referees and all them to look after that side of the game. We you know, Clare going to take that win, and I think on the balance of things, I thought they just about deserved it. You know, in terms of probably we had enough goal chances in the first half to probably put them away. And should have, you know, just be a bit more clinical in that side of things. But a win is a win in terms of those conditions. We were just happy to get out of Ennis with 2 points.
Just how good is Mark Rogers? Like, you think about the way he set up that goal for Darragh Lohan earlier in the game, like a nice turnover, and then a beautiful hand pass, must have been 15-yard hand pass. His composure to finish off that goal chance for himself, even having the nerve to knock over that 65, even if he obviously robbed a few yards and all that kind of stuff. He really does look like he's coming to the boil now as a real class act.
Yeah, and I think people forget how young he is. Like, you know, it does take you a bit of time, but like, he shows glimpses of that ability all the time. I think what he's brought, especially in the Munster Championship, probably bar the Limerick game, you know, the other two, he showed a level of consistency, I suppose, across the 70 minutes where he's impacting the game a lot. A lot is made of Richie Hogan being a good handballer. Like, Mark Rogers was a very good handballer too, you know, so you can see like that hand pass is very understated, like, in terms of the ability. Like, he passed it from the 45 inside the 21. It was right in front of him. It was just it was on a plate. He probably wouldn't have passed it with the hurley as well. It just fell into his lap. So, but he's impacting the game an awful lot more. And also, you know, he has that mentality that, you know, he stood up and took that 65 when he could have very easily been looking around at Tony, to go and take it, but no, he stood up and he wanted to take it, and I commend that. I probably had him as Clare's first choice free taker before coming into the Munster Championship, but I would say Aidan McKee's had a great Munster campaign. He couldn't take it away from him. I think Mark is probably a more natural free taker, but listen, it's a great complaint to have these lads on the field at the end that can take that, I suppose, to pressurised situations.
Just a question, Colin. There was a little bit of a lack of a kind of a clinical nature to Clare yesterday. I thought he actually, I'd be straight with you, I thought he fell over the line in a way, having played so well. Even Rodgers had the chance to go 4 up. Remember that under the shed side, and it was a really good chance. Like, are you in any way worried about? Like, I thought he should have been out of sight going down the stretch. I thought there should have been no need for any nonsense going down the stretch, and that you probably shot yourselves in the foot a small bit. Yeah,
there shouldn't have been, like, even like Tony had a chance when he came on, and in fairness to Tony, then he redeemed himself with the goal, and it's absolutely phenomenal to see him come on and impact the game. I think people were very unfair on him against Limerick. He was probably rushed back, and people expecting him to score 3-5, so to come on yesterday, won a free, missed the point, but then got a goal, like, so. Clare should have been, like, Davy Fitz had a chance in the first half. He shot from the 21, like, he should have gone in. Rodgers the same, hit the Waterford lad in the helmet when David Reedy was inside him. Like, they could have been a bit like what Cork were in the second half against Tipp yesterday. They could have had 5 goals in the first half yesterday, Clare could have had, and I think they'd have been out of sight. But I think the nature of these games, like Shane O'Donnell was only talking there recently about how, like, teams are pushing more people forward to make sure that they get enough scores to win games like this. And I think the nature of the game is there's going to be purple patches, but you have to hit purple patch, really strongly, and you have to get scores at the right times. And like, the one thing would worry me is that obviously we were 8 against Limerick and got reeled back, and you were 8 points up against Waterford and got reeled back as well. So it is something that they're going to have to look at, going forward if they are to be successful.
One thing that I thought was quite striking is, like, first half, Watford had 66% possession, but the two teams created more or less the same amount of chances, about 24, 25 each. And I was thinking, like, Watford were working the ball around a nice bit. They weren't actually threatening Eibhear Quilligan at all. Whereas I'd counted up 5 goal chances that Clare had in the first half. And plenty of time, it was just a case of you went long, often and early, which meant you're not holding on to the ball. You're not building your possession stats. You're happy to lamp it up the field. And you could see, maybe without Conor Prunty, that Watford were really bothered by your long ball. No, you didn't always do it, but you have that in the locker. Yeah,
like, Shane, I'll be honest, there's one player that allows us to do that, and that's Shane O'Donnell. Like, no matter, like, the only bad ball into Shane O'Donnell is no ball. Like, it doesn't really matter. And I'd say he's telling lads in training, just get it in and get it in often, because, like, his ability to win the ball, no matter what way it comes in, is such an asset to Clare. Like, he's, like, it goes far to say, as, like, in current form this year, he's the best hurler in Ireland, in terms of how he influences us, his level of competitiveness, his level of ball winning, his clinical nature, the way he brings other players into the game. It's just like, we'll miss him greatly when he's gone. I think we need to laud him while he's here.
Yeah, I'd agree. But, like, did you think that, when Clare started to be drawn back in, reeled back in by Waterford, and that penalty been taken, like, what were you thinking those last couple of minutes, Colin?
Oh, I was worried, but I also did think that we were just starting to get a bit more possession. I think we were just starting. The game had just opened up a small bit. Tony was making runs for puckouts. I was kind of thinking, listen, just get a win here no matter what. I suppose a draw wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world for us, but you still want to win to make sure that everything is in your own hands and stuff like that. So I won't say I wasn't worried, but even when Waterford got Clare back to level, I still thought Clare would create an opportunity, to score. I think we had enough lads that were playing well enough in the game. It was that patch, kind of, I suppose, in the middle of the second half, that really we fell. We weren't winning enough ball, maybe on our own puck out, but Conditions were so hot. It must have been so hard for the half forward line to be making them runs for puck outs constantly, and creating that space. And when it got away from us, it just took a while to get it back.
Michael, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, I think there was a hell of a lot of relief on the pitch in Cusack Park yesterday. If you like, the frustrating thing from a Waterford point of view is that they feel they left a point behind against Tipperary, and they feel they should have got something out of yesterday. And the final round would look complete. If they were on 4 points, even the final round would look completely different. If they're on 4 points, they'd be guaranteed their passage through. From a Clare point of view, Colin, I should have said it to you when you came on, but you were smirking at the start. Whatever about yesterday, you were smirking at the prospect of putting all sorts of daggers through the Tipp heart next Sunday.
No, like
stop now.
It was more Stapleton.
Yeah, people think I hate Tipperary. I don't. I just hate this man.
Yeah.
But like, even if you just weigh up all of what Clare have produced so far, 53, 55 minutes, whatever you want to say, against Limerick, unbelievable. Beat Cork. Now that was when you view it through what Cork have done since against Limerick, obviously, and certainly the way they annihilated Tipperary. That win for Clare looks all the more impressive. And then to come through against, that is a good Waterford team at the same time. How do you now view Clare's overall Munster performance up to now?
Oh, listen, Clare, I'm sure, listen, if you ask the group, they probably want to be in a Munster final and win a Munster final. But as a Clare supporter, I was like, get out of this group. Like, you can't look at it any other way, because if you take your eye off the ball, like, everybody's beating each other. Like, with Waterford coming to the fore this year, Cork rediscovering their form. Like, there's going to be one really good team out of the championship next week, on current form. Like, in terms of a team
and
that
one
could
bad
go
one.
on.
And one bad one out as well.
I said next week. They're already gone. But like, I think the performances and don't get me wrong, I think Waterford will in licking their lips against Limerick next week. Like, I said this to Bugs and Tex Bugs yesterday. I was talking to a couple of players. Clare have to look after their own business next week, because if Waterford win and Clare don't, like, Clare are out. Like, so it's Clare just have to look after their own patch. So, like, they've been good, they've been consistent. I think the worry will be letting leads go, not being clinical enough. But like, when you look back at hindsight at what they did below in Cork, they can be really impressed. I think their Munster campaign so far, but they need to finish it off next week. It's no good having a campaign like that and fall over the line or not win against Tipperary. And I think the one thing that the Clare lads will probably have to look at is, like, Tipp came to Ennis last year and round the Munster Championship and turned them over. So I think if they've anything to kind of garner a bit of emphasis on next week, it's to make sure that they get that one back.
PWell74 is a good comment here. TK, Tony Kelly, not right. Reminds me of Keane Lynch last year. Forced himself out there when the body isn't up to it yet. He needs to be left out until he's right. Where do you feel he's at, Colin, when you watch him at the moment?
Oh, sure. Like, lads, I don't think anybody could really understand what he has been through with that injury, in terms of his ankle. Like, you can see he's obviously a leader. I suppose he's looking at maybe, I don't know how far his body's going to take him, in terms of inter-county hurling, but you can see he wants to be out there. I think he made a difference yesterday. I think putting him in around, maybe, I don't know if putting him on the inside line where you'd be turning quickly and making all those runs all the time is probably best asset. I thought maybe they could probably bring him in the middle of the park where he can link up a lot of play, and as the game progresses, where that kind of opens up a small bit. So I felt a bit sorry for him when he goes into the inside line, especially the way the game is played now. You're making constant sprints and turns, and but he looked better than what he was against Limerick. I'd say he hasn't a whole pile of training done, but obviously he's such a leader, and you just don't know where his body is at. But having him around the place, he's definitely not right. But I don't know how right he's ever going to be with it, and it's probably something that we need to appreciate while we are here. That that he's still around. I do foresee long term, if he can get the injury right, I can see him sitting in at 6, instead of John Conlon. I think he'd do a phenomenal job for Clare there, if we can get him right. But I suppose they're weighing up how to use him right this year. And obviously he's probably having these discussions with the physios and Brian, and I'd imagine he's doing some level of training, but I'd say he hasn't done a lot.
Michael, what do you think?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Like you don't exactly have time on your side here. You know what I mean? And I'm sure he's not 100% right anyway. But I'm sure he's telling Brian Lohan that he wants to be in there. He wouldn't be in there otherwise. It's not as if he's been forced to be in or anything like that. But there was mad commentary, Colin, as you said, around him coming on against Limerick. It was like people were nearly saying it was the reason things started to go south, which was absolutely ridiculous. But if he's good, if he's fit enough to feature in these games, he's obviously he's not too bad, shall we say. But I would be a bit worried about the long-term kind of effect. He's had a good bit of ankle trouble the last, was it Waterford All-Ireland quarter-final 2020, I think, when he went down underneath the stand, and he's had a good bit of trouble with that since. But they need him on the pitch, but they also want him on the pitch and want him in, these kind of crucial kind of moments. But he's definitely not 100% at it. There's no doubt about that.
And he's he's a very, very liked character in the group. Everybody would look up to him. The younger lads would look up to him and stuff like that. But yeah, I would imagine he's weighing up. He's in terms of the short term versus long term. I'd say he's had a lot of trouble with his ankles. He's had surgeries. I'd say he's looking at this and going, I don't know how much more I have left, so he's probably taking every year as, I have to be out there because it could be the end. It's a bit like Shane O'Donnell kind of nearly looking at every year as it could be my last, and he just wants to be out there and stuff like that. So it's, they have given phenomenal service. I think people forget how young they were going in with Clare, and they've barely missed a game, in terms of anything long-term injury. They've been some of Clare's greatest hurlers, Tony, Shane O'Donnell, John Conlon, this group, them lads, and they're still, showing up for Clare every day of the week they go out. So I think we can be very quick to judge, I think, but obviously in the group they want him there. He wants to be there. Brian probably wants him to be there, and probably they're making the best decision about what they think he's able for on any given day.
Michael, what do you make of that Waterford team?
I'd be pretty impressed with them, I have to say. There was lots thrown at them. They conceded 4 goals in a game and still had themselves in a winning position. There's absolutely no doubt in their character. There's no doubt in their resilience. There's no doubt in that they're rowing in behind Davy and everything that he's, the gospel that he's preaching to them. And I think they're dangerous going into the Limerick game. I really do. If you look at the two big championship performances they had last year, one was Limerick, where they left a bag of scores behind them. Should have got a result out of that game. And obviously, they beat Tipp in the last game as well. This year has been a way more consistent graph. The league was poor. Their championship performances have been really, really good. And they'd no real right to be in that game coming down the stretch yesterday. And they were. So I think they'll have plenty of belief going into Limerick at the weekend. And lads, I genuinely would not put it out of the equation that ends up in a draw and Cork end up out of the championship. I genuinely wouldn't. Watford are fighting for their lives at the weekend, and it would be a terrible championship to go out of having played so well. Imagine how sick you'd be if you'd thrown in, one clanger of a performance. You'd say something. They've had 3 pretty good displays. Cork was outstanding. The Tipperary game was pretty good, and they'll feel that'll be the one that will hurt them if they don't get out of Munster. But they were brilliant yesterday when things were going wrong. You don't concede 4 goals and get a result generally in a big championship game, and they very, very nearly did. So I think they're in a decent spot. I thought it was funny, peculiar that Barron and Stephen Bennett went off yesterday when the game was really in the melting pot, and obviously Shane converted the penalty after, which was beautifully bought by Patrick Fitzgerald, you'd have to say. He was going to ground once he got inside the area completely, but I thought he bought the penalty well. Now Dermot Ryan gave him a chance as well, but no, I think Waterford are tipping away well, and I think there's a big kick in them at the weekend again.
And I was just going to say, with all of that in mind, Colin, I'm sure will be back in a second there, but with all of that in mind, Limerick having a couple of weeks to take a break, is that going to stand to them? Or, Colin is back there. But Colin, just putting everything in the context of what Michael has said about Waterford there, and they do look to be humming well. They look an athletic team. They have plenty of scorers, all that kind of stuff, and a bit of depth. Where do you think Limerick are at now? And, we've seen that they've, had quite an injury toll. Maybe there's miles on the clock. Now, they're still number one, but are they in any way vulnerable as far as you're concerned?
Listen, I suppose until they're beaten, you couldn't say they're vulnerable, because they've proved everybody wrong every time they've had, stuff flung at them. But as time goes on, somebody's going to have to beat them. It's a bit like, the great Kilkenny team, Tipp came along and just, they had to beat them. Somebody has to turn up to beat them. I really do think this Waterford team, especially after that performance yesterday, Davy will have them primed to have a right cut at Limerick next week. I think they use their bench really well, Waterford. As long as they can recover well, I suppose the only thing Limerick do have is that bit of time. They can recover, and they've shown that they can recover well. Peter Casey's a loss, and I think it would have probably dampened the mood of the camp. I'd say from what I gather, he's well-liked character around the place, and he brings them something completely different. But then you have Seamus Flanagan on form. Garrod Hegarty's having a really good year. They're probably the one line that they're probably worried about, that has probably been their best line for a number of years and most consistent, is probably their half-back line at present. I think Declan Hannon, Cork will look at running. Waterford will look at running that. I think midfield, Darragh Donovan's a loss. He might be back this week. You don't know. So they just, some of their players that have been really exceptional and making them tick down through the last couple of years are just struggling for a small bit of form. But who am I questioning them? Every time that's been put up to them, they've showed up and they've put together a performance. But I definitely do think it's getting closer.
I think they're selling as a pup. He's selling as a pup. He thinks there's a vulnerability there. Come on, Colin, admit it.
I kind of gathered that too, but I also, just on, lads, Davy would love nothing more than to end the drive for 5. Jesus Christ. This, if you're talking about a fella or a team need motivation going into the weekend, that would be some mantle to have, that you were the team that knocked them out. And lads, I think they're very dangerous going into the weekend. I think Waterford are dangerous and they're flying, and I think Limerick are a little bit vulnerable. Now, they've been vulnerable before and they've managed to pull it out. Talking Mike Casey being back potentially, and maybe Darragh O'Donovan. But again, Limerick usually don't parachute lads in with little game time under their belts. So Darragh O'Donovan wouldn't have played since maybe the third round of the league if he does play. Mike Casey hasn't played since 6 minutes. He's played 6 minutes since the league semi-final. You know what I mean? So there are definitely vulnerabilities there, and that's the fascinating thing. No, as Colin says there, you're not going to really doubt Limerick until they're no longer in the championship, because they just have that credit in the bank. But there are definitely a few doubts going into the weekend. On the flip of it then, and you're saying Waterford are bringing proper form into that game, real good form, hurling poles apart to the way they hurled last year when they should have beaten them.
And Colin, is it just that Clare lads are afraid to say we think Limerick might have a bit of vulnerability?
No, who are we to doubt them? Shane, they've earned every bit of their credit. Every time we think that they're going to be vulnerable, they've showed up, and we've said that they're missing Cian Lynch and all these lads, and they go through an All-Ireland campaign. Somebody else steps up. I really do think until somebody beats them, you can't, until somebody knocks them out. But I do think you're right, Michael. I think Fitzy will be looking at this and going this is a chance for us to get out of Munster first and foremost, which they haven't done for a number of years, and obviously knock Limerick out, and that's as long as Clare go and win, obviously. But they'll cherish this, but will they recover quick enough after a real hard battle yesterday? That's going to be the second point. You've seen everybody kind of maybe struggle sometimes when they play really hard games 2 weeks in a row, but it's completely up in the air. But Waterford will be coming with a good chance, and obviously it's a home game for them.
Some depth in that Clare panel, though. When you think about David McInerney not being there, and they could just throw in Cian Galvin, and it doesn't seem to take a funk out of you, Colin.
I probably would argue a small bit with that statement. I don't think we have as much depth as what we think, but at the same time, I think the way we play allows for some lads to slot in and maybe it not to be, a massive ordeal. I thought Keane Galvin was good yesterday. He did okay, but, probably not to the level that David Mack would have been. There was just a few vulnerabilities. I think could probably use the bench a bit more in terms of lads running out of steam. I thought Waterford used their bench really well. I thought when Shane Bennett came in, he was really good. He gave Adam Hogan and Rory Hayes a bit of a hard time there towards the end of the game, and he was giving them plenty of it, and I thought we were probably stocked there. I really do think we probably need to use our bench a bit quicker just to release the fresh legs, especially when conditions were as hot as they were yesterday. Yeah, it's very hard to keep chasing those down constantly. Having John Conlon at 6 probably doesn't really matter what your two wing backs are doing. The way he played yesterday, I thought he was phenomenal, in terms of covering ground, and he just wants to defend. So he wants to stay. So having lads that can head up the field and good ball strikers, and Colin Malone does his fair share of defending for Clare as well. I think he's understated in terms of how far he comes back at times, and links up play and cuts out maybe angles and stuff like that. But when you have the likes of Davy Fitz and Dave Reedy and Rogers who can come back to field and run the ball really well, but it's a bit like what Limerick have. Limerick are so good because they have players to play the game that they're going to play. At the minute, Clare have some exceptional players that allow him to play the way they play, to be able to leave Shane O'Donnell inside the full forward line on his own and not worry about it, whether it's 3v1 or 2v1, he's going to occupy them. That's such a great asset to have.
Michael?
Yeah, and just on O'Donnell, lads, as well. You think he can't get much better than been, obviously, player of the month for April or whatever it was, and he's in the paper nearly every day of the week doing interviews for left, right, and centre, and he just books every trend. There were different stages. I thought earlier today he was good in them in the first maybe 10, 15 minutes, and he did okay. But O'Donnell just makes the whole thing tick, lads. And if you can afford to leave him inside and just, it's not even a case of getting unbelievable ball into him. It's a case of getting it in anyway, Colin, at times, isn't it? Because he's just so good in the air as well. He's in the sort of form now where you're just thinking, if we have this lad flying, we can achieve potentially anything.
And I think one of his greatest assets is he's relentless. I thought the same. I thought Erla Daly was good in him for the first 10 minutes, and I thought, he's going to have a tough time here. But he just keeps going. As in, he just next ball. As in, it doesn't matter. He's just constantly showing for the ball. And I'd say, as a cornerback, it must be the hardest thing in the world to mark him, because you switch off for 1 second and he has the ball in the back of the net, or he has you turned, and once he wins the ball, it's pretty much damage limitation at that stage, because he just creates so many opportunities and the lads know he's running off them. But just on his personality, I only met him there recently on the off weekend in Lahinch, and my young fella was with me, and he's just in awe, of how he dealt with him, and Shane came over, and he was just he smiling for the week, going into school, saying that he met Shane O'Donnell, and how did you know him, Dad? How do you know this fella? It's
that is gas. Hey, I just wanted to ask you as well, Colin, before we let you go, about Cork and how good you think they are. Obviously, they lit Tipperary up, but what do you make of them?
Yeah, I heard some of the stuff around yesterday, I think it's the first time Cork are hurling. I think they've just so many hurlers, they just don't know how to balance their team at times. I think they've found something that has worked. They've been defending really well. I think they have something this year where there's a bit of unity in them. The individuality has gone a small bit, and they seem to be playing as a team an awful lot more, which is what the good teams are doing now. You can't have a couple of really exceptional players that you're hoping will win you a game without having the rest doing the exact same thing. But I do think that Shane Barrett and Alan Connolly, they are exceptional hurlers, and they are just relentless in terms of Shane Barrett. He is keeping a whole half back line busy in terms of his running ability, his strength, and Alan Connolly inside is really taking the pressure off Hoggy, which means that Hoggy's actually playing well as well, so because he's not being the one that's marked constantly. Brian Hayes is making runs, Harnady's winning hard ball, Darragh Fitzgibbon is is I think Darragh Fitzgibbon and Shane O'Donnell have been the two standout hurlers really in the Munster Championship in terms of consistency, I think, and what they bring to their team. But they just have a better balance, and they're the one team. Coming out of Páirc Uí Chaoimh, Clare coming out of Páirc Uí Chaoimh with a win, I was like, any will do, because they're the one team that can just cut you open. And I really do kind of think they'll have a big say in the championship if they get out of Munster.
Yeah. Any final questions for Colin and Michael?
No, I think that's gas. That your young fella didn't know who, or how you might know Shane O'Donnell. Jesus Christ, short memories. Suppose if they, what can you do?
Well, in his life, like the last 2 years are the only thing that he remembers in terms of Clare
point. I think you need some sort of video on loop or something like.
Listen, I don't know. In time, you might appreciate it. I don't know if you ever will.
Colin, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll chat again soon. And okay.
Cheers.
Maybe play a few videos of 2013 for the young lad, will you?
He'll be all right. They're better
okay,
than that.
Okay, always good to have Colin on the show. Where do you feel? Like, do you feel like Clare looking at this and thinking, like, right? So a point I'd make about Cork is the more games go on, the stronger they look like they're getting. Whereas, Tipperary week on week, it looks like they're almost withering on the vine a little bit at the moment, and maybe that's confidence too. But physically, Clare look like they're getting stronger, and Cork look like they're getting stronger. And Limerick, brilliant and all, and Precarious and all as they are getting more and more injuries. It feels like the more games is sort of like chipping away at them a little bit.
Yeah, I thought John Cahill had a very interesting comment after the Tipperary game. He was just talking about, Declan Bogue actually asked him about, will you pull back on your 15 versus 15 games, or like that, your A versus B games, or like that. And he just said, fear can never be your motivator. And he just said that we will stay going and going and going. And if lads fall along the way, that's just the nature of it. So they're not going to... When does that
stop, Michael? Like, how many injuries do you have to pick up before you start to revise that? Because there is a time where you get to it and you're like, we really can't afford another one.
Yeah, to be fair, they have all been in games. Darragh O'Donovan's probably wasn't, but the vast majority of them have been in games. And I don't know. I'd say, like, I do think Casey and O'Donovan will both feature in the 26. I'd be very surprised if Finn does. Up in the air about hand, and you won't really know till probably Friday morning, I'd say. I don't know. I don't know if he would have revised it too much, given that it's what has brought them to the dance. And that, like, I remember hearing when Cian Lynch went down in that training the week before the All-Ireland final, and he was absolutely flying at the time. It was just a case of, like, I do believe, like, the ambulance came in and carted him off, and it was like, boom, we're going here again. Like, and the game was apparently absolutely helter-skelter thereafter, and there was no one pulling back at all whatsoever. So that's probably the frame of mind that they're in, I'd say. And, like, if you're wearing a jersey between 26 and 36 and you're trying to break in, like, you do need those opportunities. And it sounds like he gives them the whole time. But there was a comment in there from Raymond Gilburn, who I know is Limerick man. Like, we're not writing off Limerick, but you're allowed to ask questions. And it's the same. It's the very same as the Cork game last year. There were questions going into that game. They just got through it. And I think the same will happen this year if they just get through it. But they have to get through it. And there is a question mark about that. And that's what makes it so fascinating. And that's what makes, like, Jesus, when the round robins were brought in at that special congress at the end of September in 2017, I think it was, like, they've over delivered. Like, this is like this.
No, they haven't. I'm having a somber week here.
Yeah, but, like, it's mad. Like, the drama that we could potentially have between 2:00 and 6:00 on Sunday. The 3 games in Leinster all have huge significance for the top 4 spots, and then the relegation match between Antrim and Carlow. And you could say, like, the Tipp game has a lot of significance for Tipp, and potentially for others if Tipp are able to somehow rise from the ashes. And then obviously Waterford and Limerick is an absolutely huge game as well. So it's manna from heaven for the people that put these structures together, like, to have that final day drama, to have the scenario where you have the change in board, the change in table, who's ahead now, who's, like, that's you can't buy that. It's like last year, like weren't Tipperary a point or two away from being like they're in a Munster final before the game was played, according to everyone. And then if a point or two either way, or if did they get back to the deficit down just enough? Yeah.
And if Cork got another point, weren't they in a Munster final? They were certainly through anyway if they had to draw Limerick. And Limerick were on the edge of a knife as well. There's a good comment here from Fia Kanish. You have to play over 6 hours of hurling to get to a Munster final. Who has the stamina? I suppose including injury time, it's about that. But when you put it that way, you're putting your body through hell there over the space of 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's a fair length of time. I'd argue and say you have to play. What have you to play? How many minutes have you got to play to get to a Leinster final? More anyway.
A little bit more, just over 7, I suppose.
Yeah, like it's fair. It is fair attrition, and a lot of the time it's going to be who's left standing, who's the most bodies still in place, or your main bodies. A lot of it will come down to luck as well. Every squad will lose players. You're just hoping that some of your big guns don't go down, particularly at crucial times. With due respect, you're hoping that if you pick up an injury, that it's someone that's on the fringes maybe, and that you get away without one of your marquee men getting injured. But like, what a weekend we had, and what a weekend ahead. Like, it's gonna be fascinating. Like,
yeah, I'd say we've had as many viewers watching this live show as we've ever had for any show. And just a reminder, we are brought to you by OurGaretro.com. Well worth supporting them. Do some unbelievable jerseys and zip up tops and the whole lot. So go to OurGaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That's very good for helping us grow the channel. And if you want to get some exclusive columns about the games from the weekend, the audio pods, use patreon.com/OurGame. There's a good comment in here from somebody. Where is it? Yeah, surprised Shane hasn't swapped to the Dublin jersey already. But they could be gone. They could be gone in less than a week as well, because they're definitely going to be outsiders when they go to Galway. And I know Dublin generally do quite well against Galway, but still, they're going to be outsiders. And everything's on the line for Henry Shefflin there. They were a point behind on Antrim over the weekend. Antrim got a red card. I think it was Ryan McGarry just after the break. And they only scored 3 points in the second half. Galway ramped home. But, like, it wasn't looking good there for long spells.
No, wasn't looking good. They came with a bit of a flourish. And you would have been... we've always said that they usually go very hard at teams that are, ranked inferior to them anyway, but that wasn't really the case at the weekend. There's a good few question marks about Galway. Like, there is, like, that the Wexford non-performance in the second half is a big worry. The fact that they didn't completely blow it out of the water at the weekend and deliver a real command and display would be a bit of I just would sense that Dublin get the sense that Galway are a small bit maybe fragile, or there's bits of vulnerabilities there. And like, the fascinating thing about it is who knows them better than the three lads in the line as well. And it's like it's a huge week for Dublin, and with the 20 final on Wednesday night, and then obviously the game on Sunday as well. Like, potentially they could be in an All-Ireland under 20 final and maybe a Leinster final by 4 o'clock on Sunday.
Why couldn't Cork versus Tipp have been on GA Go, so nobody would have, in relative terms, the exposure would have been far less?
I was actually only thinking that as well. It's funny. This is why you have to broadcast, quantity. Sometimes you're going to get Clare and Waterford, which was a rip roar and had all the drama. But unfortunately, they've broadcast 2 Tipperary games this year, and they've both been washouts. So you take the rough with the smooth.
Well, I'm only seeming to get the rough at the moment. Something else I wanted to say to you before we move on was just Cork in their last 2 games, and they've put up unbelievable scores. They've averaged over 70% score and conversion rate in that period of time in both games. Like, that's unbelievable. Then also, when you're looking at like the way that Leinster has kind of happened over the last few years, now there was that final day drama in 2019 when it was Galway against Dublin and it was Kilkenny against Wexford. And it's going to be the same again, except this time we also get a relegation clash.
Yeah.
But this could be mad now. In the space of 5 years, let's say Galway go down against Dublin. Twice it will have been their own native managers, Matty Kenny and now Micheál Donoghue. And Donoghue was on the wrong side 5 years ago. Wouldn't that be very ironic? Isn't really the word. It would be quite a little nasty twist of fate if it was twice the Galway man doing it to them.
Yeah, I'd be mad. And you also have it like that was Donoghue's last game as Galway manager in 2019. Like, it hazard a guess and say if Dublin win at the weekend, that would be Henry Shefflin's last match as Galway manager.
Yeah.
You'd hazard a guess and say it. Do you know what I mean? So there's so much on the line, and this is the thing. Everything is on a knife edge. Like Cork are seen as realistic All-Ireland contenders now in a lot of people's eyes, but they might be in the championship come Sunday evening. Galway could get a massive hop if they get a big result at the weekend. Wexford could get a massive hop if they get a result at the weekend, but also saying that the two of them could also be out. Do you know what I mean? It's brilliant, like, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cork are finally doing what I've been kind of feeling like they should have done for the last 3 or 4 years. Like, they've had the class, the quality, everything, but they're finally putting it together now. If they can get through, if results don't conspire against them, I don't know, am I starting to think they're favourites?
Wow, okay.
I know. I can't believe I said it, but, like, they've just got everything.
Stop that, relax down.
What don't they have? And we haven't seen Robbie O'Flynn, we haven't seen Ben Cunningham at all. Obviously, Robbie O'Flynn's been injured, and Kieran Joyce to come back in.
Resistance was futile now yesterday, to be fair. So I wouldn't lose
Tate
the run.
was there against Limerick. There's plenty of resistance.
Yeah, no, that's true. I wouldn't lose the run of myself about yesterday. They are very dangerous, no doubt about it. Theoretically, you'd say they'd be more dangerous if they got up to Croke Park. But I'm still going to doubt them until they have Liam in their hands. To be honest with you, just because. Yeah, I've been stung too many times from 2019 onwards. I'd say I've fancied them every second year, and they haven't even got to, they've been to one All-Ireland final. You said they were going to win the 2021 All-Ireland final, actually. So you've been. It's funny to see you jump from the Tipp ship. Now you're jumping to the arch enemies.
Oh no! I would never jump to the Cork ship. It's grand because they've been down for 20 years in terms of winning All Irelands, but as soon as they get back on top, they're going to be absolutely unbearable again.
Shane, isn't there support something else? Like, in all honesty, like, I think they were saying the other day that there was 10,000 tickets sold in the hour after the Limerick game. A lot of people just making up their minds. We're going, like, for a team that has won nothing at senior level in recent years. When was their last Munster? 20. Did they win it in 18? They beat Clare in 18, I think, did they? They've won nothing at senior level in 6 years, and their support is ravenous. They are loving it, and listen, the underage has probably given them the taste for that in the last couple of years, and they probably feel there's something brewing. It's just a matter of the match catching fire, but it looks like the match has been lit now at this stage.
Hoggy's going to get his All Ireland. You heard it here first.
Well, to be no one that would deserve it more anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Wexford, when you consider how inconsistent they've been, losing to Antrim, nobody saw that coming, but we all kind of thought, right, that's their championship done, especially after the 2 late goals conceded against Dublin turned victory into a draw. But my God, did they pulverise a Carlow team by 26 points, a Carlow team that had drawn with Kilkenny last week. And, like, what sort of form lines are we looking at here at all? Nobody has any idea.
Nah, there's no form lines, and that's the great thing about it, because you can't really predict. But, like, these have generally been the type of games that Wexford have struggled in. I put up a tweet at half-time, Wexford are winning by 14. And Wexford people are so stung by the recent past that they're just like, Wexford with big leads in May. Like, this is what people are getting back. It was 17, obviously, against Westmeath last year, but they kept, like, that's really pleasing from Keith Rossiter's point of view, that they kept the foot. Not only did they keep it on the throat, like, they stamped all over it, and it was, like, really comprehensive, a massive score. Conor Mack looking like he's back on form, sharp, Chin, bringing the same sort of form that he's had the whole way through, even through good and bad, he's brought it. And they've left themselves, like Rossiter, I think, said, like, coming back down the road from Belfast that day against Antrim, I'd have taken their hand off to be in this position. And they're in this position now against a team that they've had pretty good success against in recent years, beating them in the last two championships, beaten after extra time, I think, in 21, drew with them in 19 and beat them in a Leinster final. We're beating a point by them in 18 and beat them in 17. Like, they've any element of history or the weight of history against Kilkenny is not really relevant for this crew. On the flip of that, you do have a Kilkenny team that are surely sick of the sight of them, and surely have a good few wrongs to right about games where they've been blown away by them in recent years.
And you wouldn't put it, you wouldn't say that it's all that unlikely that we could get 2 draws, which would, put Galway out actually again.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't say it's that unlikely. You do well confidently call. If you had a house now, you do well put the mortgage on anyone getting through. Kilkenny are the ones that look more like permutations would have to be pretty unique to see them not get through even in the third spot.
And we'd hate to see that now.
Well, like Shane, you're going into this weekend. Imagine, at 4:45 on Sunday, if you had Kilkenny out, and at 5:45 you had Limerick out. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. It's unlikely, but one of them could yet go out. You never know.
It'd make for some All-Ireland if the two of them went out, because everyone would think it's our turn. It's our turn, because
I just feel like this year, I've thought a couple of weeks ago, I just feel like this is a bang of 2013 about it. And you just need to stay alive and just keep tipping away, because a couple of big hitters could fall unexpectedly along the way. Maybe that won't happen. If Limerick and Kilkenny both get through at the weekend, you'd be fancying, there's every possibility that they could meet in an All-Ireland final for the third year in a row. But whether they're still both standing at the weekend is another story.
Yeah, that's some stuff at the moment. And even we already mentioned that Offaly beat Kerry and they're into the final of the Joe McDonagh. Westmeath hammered Meath 129 to 14 points there. Killian Doyle, he scored 8 points there. Clinton scored 1-4. That means that Meath are going to go down to the Christy Ring for 2025. And Laois, they put, I think it was 17 minutes of the game that Laois hadn't scored. And then they got 4 goals midway through the first half. Ultimately, 431 to 17 points win over Down. That is some beating. 2-2 each for Willie Dunphy and Tomas Keys.
Yeah, 430's first score, and that seems to be like a common kind of team this weekend.
It was 431. Tip didn't concede quite that much. You were loving it, weren't you? Weren't you loving it watching
I'd be straight, actually, no. Genuinely, and that's hand on my heart. And there's almost a pressure coming into the Monday shows when lads are expecting me to absolutely eviscerate you. I honestly prefer the hurling landscape when Tipper going well but not winning All-Ireland. Dangerous but not winning All-Ireland. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. You want them in and around there, but you don't want them kind of raising the cup at the end.
Yeah, exactly. I want them getting close and a bit of heartbreak along the way, but I don't want them being paddled.
Well, then look, in the Christy Ring, Kildare had their 5th straight win, and that was 3-14 London, 2-20 to Kildare. Sligo, they were hammered by Derry. That was 430 to 19 points. Callum O'Kane, Sean Quinn, Rory Magnon, and John Mullen, they got the goals.
I think that sets up a Derry. Kildare final. Yeah.
And the only team I think that have beaten Derry in their last 11 games, league and championship, is Kildare. So they'll be looking for a little bit of revenge there. Yeah. Tyrone 125, Wicklow 216. In the Nicky record, Loud 120, Donegal 419. Armagh had a 319 to 18 point win over Monaghan. And Mayo and Roscommon, they drew 119 to 216. Laurie Maher then, Lancashire 224, Warwickshire 622, some scoring there. Longford 318, Fermanagh 221. And my old buddy Nicky Kenny hit a hat-trick for Cavan, 719 to 18 points win over Leitrim. So that's as comprehensive as it comes.
It surely is. Fermanagh definitely booked their Laurie Maher Cup final place anyway. Not 100% sure who they meet in that. But just back to the McDonagh for a second.
I think Longford.
Yeah, could be Longford, yeah. It's a kind of a mad one in the McDonagh. The last round of games, they're all irrelevant. It's a bit of a disaster for the competition. But they're all completely irrelevant. Offaly will put out a second string team. Laois will put out a second string team. You're assured of the two finalists. You're assured of who's going to be relegated. It's kind of a mad type of a scenario where all 3 games would be meaningless. But obviously, for the integrity of the competition and everything, I'm sure teams will certainly want to win and the fixtures will be fulfilled. But it's a very strange one.
Can I ask you this? Who do you think what game is going to draw a bigger crowd? Laois against Offaly, and I mean an Offaly crowd, in the Joe McDonagh final, or the Leinster under-20 final between Offaly under-20s and Dublin?
I think there'd be a bigger Offaly crowd at the 20s, being honest with you.
Isn't that mad? And I think we could go that way with Tipp in the next year or two, given how the seniors are going.
Yeah, the McDonagh's going to be in Croke Park as well. Now, there was a good crowd at that game last year. That came the week before the 20s, I think, maybe the week before. These games are going to be, it won't be that close in proximity, to be about 10 days between them. But the 20s are just probably one of the best supported teams in the country. Like,
would you rather see Laois against Offaly in Thurles, where it's a bit more proximate for all the supporters?
Yeah, I'd have no issue with that whatsoever, to be honest with you. Yeah. You're also going to put, let's just say you put 25,000 into Thurles for that game. Thurles would be rocking. Now, to be fair, Croke Park was rocking for the McDonagh final last year, but there wasn't a huge crowd or anything like that, but there was a very vocal crowd. But I'd have no issue with Thurles. Saying that, players probably would in the sense of saying that the Offaly lads played there last year. Laois wouldn't have played in Croke Park too many times outside of the McDonagh final in 19, and when they played Tipp in that quarter final in 19 as well. So you can't, sometimes maybe you forget, like, it is unbelievable as a player to play in Croke Park, and something that you will never forget. For the occasion and the atmosphere, Thurles would probably be better, even like Nolan Park potentially. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Cork Offaly under 20 final last year, I thought was like Thurles was so good and added to it. Was there something like 30,000 added, but it just felt raucous.
Yeah, it was class. Yeah. Just whatever, like that. And it's going to be something similar on Wednesday night. That's going to be, I tell you what, there won't be a puck of the ball in that. And anybody thinking the Offaly are going to win by 4 or 5 or anything like that, they'd be happy to come out of there 1-point winners. I think that has the potential to be a cracking game. And I think Dublin are very, very dangerous.
Yeah, I think they're coming to the boil nicely. One Trick Pony says, Sean O'Donoghue, black card, yes or no? It was an absolute black card. I thought, like, fair enough, Tipp got hammered for a finish, but if Tipperary had to go 2 goals to 1 point ahead, that would have been a real shot in the arm. So, it had some sort of an effect, maybe not enough to turn the game totally, but that was a definite black card.
A black card in the sense of he denied him a goal scoring opportunity, or he pulled him down?
Well, he pulled him down about 8 yards from goal with a goal scoring chance available.
He gave himself a bit of an out. O'Donoghue did by not. If he wrapped the arms around him, it was a penalty and a black card. I actually can't remember it exactly, but I remember thinking, did he just put his hand over him, Shano, or what did he do?
It seemed like, I've only ever watched it in real time, but it seemed like a trip to me.
Yeah, I wasn't. Black card didn't jump out in my head straight away. I thought it was a 50-50 kind of a call. It could have. I don't think it would have changed the game, but listen.
I had a couple of Cork journalists from the Times, Dennis Walsh and Michael Foley and Conor McKeown of the Indo, sandwiched around me, and they were getting a big earful during that period of time, and it fell on deaf ears as well. Conor McKeown more sneering me, and the other 2 lads being from Cork, not that interested. So, like, in terms of like the first round of the football championship, the group stages over the weekend, like, the results were Cork beat Clare, that was 113 to 111, pretty tight there. Sean Powter with the goal. Galway 214, Derry 15 points. I'll come back to that in a second. Mayo 20 points, Cavan 1-8, Kerry 24 points, Monaghan 111. Like, that was 16 points to 3 at one stage or something like that. It was awful. But back to Galway beating Derry 214 to 15. Sean Kelly and Keane Darcy with the goals. But there's only one place to start, and that's the stamp from Garrett McKinless. I mean, there's just no excuse for it.
No, it was brutal. I was otherwise engaged where that game was going on. That was on the same time maybe as the Parnell Park game, I think. And you just saw bits and pieces going around, and you don't know exactly what you're going to be watching, or it was there was a lot of very negative commentary around it, but it was brutal. There's no point in saying any different. It's just like that sort of a thing. Like, there's nothing, I don't know how you even describe it. There's nothing in any way. It's a very, very cowardly act. And Comer ended up going off injured and could be out for a period of time now. So he didn't go off injured at the time, but was injured after. It's such a horrible thing to do to another player. And fair play to the officials, because it was very, very difficult to see it. Even it took like the 4th view on camera to actually see what had happened. So I think it might have been Niall Cullen that was doing the line that side, and he said it to Brendan Cawley or whatever. No suspension would be too severe for that type of indiscretion.
Yeah, and I mean, Given how Galway have been going heretofore, and Keane Johnson, who we had on the show on Thursday, he was reckoning that would be a strong.
He got a good hop on social media anyway.
He did. He sure did. I just wonder, is this Galway starting to get the bodies right at the right time? And also, I see a bit of commentary around that maybe Derry have overcooked their players at this stage. And, obviously it didn't work out for them in the Ulster Championship, and Donegal caught them with the long ball and all that kind of stuff. But even just the Glen lads going back too early to focus on the league, all that kind of stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, well, the whole, we had a good debate around it about the Glen lads coming back for the Kerry game the same week as the club final, and because they won that night, it's kind of like, some people say it's grand, others say you don't, but you kind of can only judge it at the months down the line when you see what sort of juice is in the tank. Now, I believe Conor Glass was carrying his sickness or something into the game. He definitely wasn't himself, obviously, but I don't know whether that Donegal defeat has spooked Derry or what, or it's drained confidence from them. Now, there were down bodies as well. McAvoy was injured. McGrogan is obviously out with the cruciate as well. So they had a very raw, we'll say, half backline compared to what they normally would. But I think there's probably two things at play here. Derry don't seem to be the same beasts that they were, and Galway look to have got all their best players back on the pitch, and hopefully Comer can stay on the pitch, and that's, his injury is not too severe or whatever. But Galway were gutted by injury, and I suppose, when do you want lads back? Probably around now, realistically, and getting a couple of games under their belt, going potentially into the All-Ireland quarter-final stages. But yeah, Galway seem to be, I wouldn't lose the run of myself either, but they seem to be getting close-ish to the 2022 form. And Derry seem to be in a bit of a tailspin at the minute. Now, they still have plenty of time to turn around.
Yeah, and Paul Grimes says, heavy hand of history too. Galway have no fear of Derry whatsoever. Jack says, Derry found out, burnt out too early. Galway dangerous, Dubs and Kerry still a team to beat. Now, Mayo are a team that, I don't think too many are backing to win the All-Ireland, but obviously they got it done fairly comprehensively against Cavan, 20 points to 1-8. And Paddy Smith is out. Or sorry, what's his name again, the full forward?
Yeah, it is. It's Paddy Smith, isn't it?
Okay, sorry.
Same as the Dublin hurler, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Just that's what made me doubt myself for a second. But we were talking about it last week. But Paddy Durkin having to, he's had a calf injury. He came on late in this game, and at the very, very end, he pulled up again and had to be carted off. And Kevin McStay was saying it was the last play of the game. He's being assessed. I've no idea. Fingers crossed, Everton crossed that it's going to work out for him. It'll probably be 72 hours before we know. I think he was trying to sell a dummy from left to right, and there was a wobble, and he kind of fell over himself. Jarred his knee a little bit. He's up, walking around, and he's in good spirits. That's positive, but it takes time with these things to get scanned and see where he's at. That would be huge. Paddy Lynch.
Paddy Lynch, sorry, yeah. It'd be a huge loss, obviously. They're probably trying to get minutes into him because he's had kind of an interrupted season, and you're hoping he comes through those minutes at the end unscathed, and he didn't, obviously. And to me, he's the sort of player that makes him tick at different times as well. He just is able to, he's able to force things to happen in games, not just breaking lines, kicking points, and he just adds that bit of energy to it all. So he's a player that they can ill afford to be without, but it looks like they could be without him for a while now.
Yeah, and I'll just go through the Tailteann Cup then. So Down put a bit of a beating on London. I don't think it happened for him straight away in that game, but eventually 124 to 10 points. Kildare 5-15 to 6 points win over winners over Waterford. Shane O'Sullivan scored a couple of goals there. Niall Kelly 1-3, Paddy Woodgate 1-2. 3 points for Waterford's Jason Curry. Wexford 17 points, Antrim 115, Limerick 210, Offaly 08. So that's two comprehensive enough defeats in a row for you. Carlow 13, Fermanagh 113, Tipp 122, Sligo 322. So yeah, and a tough weekend for Tipp. Laois beat Wicklow 11 points to 10, and Longford lost at home to Leitrim. That was 212 to 17, and then the under 20 final, Tyrone 120, Kerry 114.
Yeah, a couple of big wins there. Laois getting the point win over Wicklow was huge, and Leitrim getting that point win over Longford was big as well. Mickey Graham obviously involved with Leitrim, and to be a good scatter of Mullinachta lads involved with Longford as well that he know pretty well. But they were big results. The Offaly result is just a disaster. Offaly beat Limerick in the league by a point, I think. They've scored 12 points and 8 points in their 2 Tailteann Cup games. They have down to come, and their goose is cooked, and they're out for the year. And our horrible record in Tailteann Cup and All-Ireland qualifiers for the last 20 plus years continues on. And it's just, yeah, you just don't know, like, you don't know what they're going to be facing into now next year. Like, Declan Kelly's had a good win over Laois. They're beating 20 points by Dublin, albeit very competitive. But the wheels have totally come off in the Tailteann Cup, and yeah, I don't know what to say. It's so bad. Like, this probably been the worst week in Offaly football history, nearly, I'd say, to be honest.
And we'll finish up then with Goat of the Week. I think it has to be Alan Connolly in the hurling anyway.
Yeah, I don't like agreeing with you on a Goat of the Week, so we try and find somebody else. And just trying to think from the probably got. Listen, all the I'm not saying any pressure was on him or anything like that, but he'd been delivering such good performances, and he'd been so centre in the media the last while with various things he'd been involved in to keep his form going. I give it to Shane O'Donnell in the hurling.
In the football, might give it to Shane O'Sullivan of Kildare, scoring a couple of goals there.
In the foosball, I didn't see a hell of a lot of football at the weekend now, to be honest with you, so I'm probably going to have to pass on that one. I'll doff my cap to your selection. Paul Geaney, by all accounts, I heard was very, very good for Kerry too.
Yeah. Paul Geaney, Patrick Morgan, still around doing it. Patrick Horgan, I presume you mean. And Joseph Nash. God be with the days when Offaly were going for the 2 All-Irelands in the 80s.
Seems like a long time ago. It is a long time ago. But Jesus Christ. Like, I thought we were building. We're not at the minute. Keane Johnson, Goat of the Week from TVPC. The only thing I'll say about that, lads, when you give an opinion, a lot of people don't give opinions. When you give an opinion, you can be either right or wrong. I'd always prefer someone to give an opinion.
Absolutely. Okay, right, Michael, we'll see you again later in the week, folks. Don't forget, orderretro.com, use the promo code OurGame, and we'll chat to you all again soon.